Fine. Right, so welcome everyone to our weekly call. Hope you all had an enjoyable weekend as always. Right, I've got slightly sore throat again this week, so apologies in advance, but they ought to be sufficient. But if anyone struggles to hear me at any point, tell me and I will try and croak a bit more loudly as best I can. Right, sharing my screen then. As some of you will hopefully be aware, the focus of the call this week, we've sort of rejigged a few things topic-wise, just to accommodate people's availability. But so I thought this week what I would do is to spend some time just giving a preview of some of the highlights of the forthcoming EuroDIG event, which starts next Monday. So I'm going to preview that, then we'll run through some recent developments, stuff that's on the agenda over the next few months, talk about some future core topics, and hopefully we should have plenty of time for any other business. So there's stuff that you want to talk about, things your organisation's just done, etc. Then be poised with those. We can have more interactive discussion at the end of the call, or towards the back end of the call. But let me dive straight into EuroDIG. Just as a reminder, it's being held in Tampere in Finland, which, as I now know, is hour and a half to 2 hours northwest slightly of Helsinki by train. So it's a good train connection if you're flying to get to Helsinki. There are some direct flights to Tampere, but the impression I have, it's a relatively small airport, but pretty well connected by train from Helsinki and other airports in Finland and Sweden as well. So what I've done is over the next few slides, I've just looked at the things on the agenda that are interesting to me, just to highlight those. They're mainly policy orientated for a change. We tend to be more technically focused on this call, or we have been of late. So these will be, broadly speaking, just sort of policy orientated topics. EuroDIG, if you've not come across it before, is the sort of European IGF, if you like, Internet Governance Forum. So it's a satellite event for the main Internet Governance Forum, which takes place this year in Kyoto in October. So potentially there'll be some readouts from the discussion in Finland into the sort of IGF later in the year. So as I say, I've sort of cherry-picked the things on the agenda which appeal to me, and I'll run through those, and if anything warrants more explanation, further discussion, it's something you're interested in, or indeed something you're involved in yourself, then interrupt me as we go along, and we can sort of drill down as appropriate. Because I think some of the people on the call are potentially going to be attending in person, as I am next week. So yeah, we can hone in on the things which are of specific interest as appropriate. Anyway, so as I say, it starts next Monday. There's a sort of a pre-event. So the slightly cryptic titling of these first few are on the agenda before EuroDIG itself has officially started, which is later on in the afternoon on Monday. And the first one, rather helpfully, and in fact it's the only one that overtly references DNS in the title, which, as you'll see, pre-3, so the third pre-event is titled "Mind the Governance Gap, Broadening the Multi-Stakeholder Response to DNS-Related Cybersecurity Threats." So it's got both DNS and cybersecurity in the title, which is all these times, as you can see, are local times in Finland, which is UTC plus 3. Which unsurprisingly is just focusing on some of the governance issues as they apply to DNS related cybersecurity threats. So I've pasted the preamble from the agenda from the EuroDIG wiki onto the screen, so you can peruse that. I won't read all of these out now because it'll take far too long and be really tedious for all of you. But that's one that caught my eye, and as Peter has observed in the chat, plenty of exclamation marks in there, unusually so for perhaps a normally sort of relatively staid EuroDIG. So it's upping its game in that respect. And there are a few more, I think, as we go down the agenda. So anyways, so that's the first one that I'll be looking out for on Monday. And as far as I can tell from the agenda, the only one which is specifically DNS related. Oh, actually, the other thing I should have said in the introduction, attendance at EuroDIG is free, both in person and, of course, being a hybrid event, remotely. So if there are things that I highlight in the next few slides that appeal to you and your diaries permit, you can still register to attend remotely. Or indeed in person, but I guess remotely is more likely at this late stage, and just dipping out in and out as appropriate to those things that sort of catch your eye and can fit in with your other diary commitments. Anyway, sort of moving on, and sorry, also all of these there's quite a lot more detail on the EuroDIG wiki, which again, I'll post this in the chat. And for those of you watching the recording, it'll be on my website. I'll post the link as well. So I've just popped in the link for the agenda. It'll take you directly to the page for Monday, but you can find the agenda for the whole 3 days on the wiki. So the second session then, as you can see, is let's promote the European vision for digital governance and cooperation in the UN, which is really just trying to sort of look at how the wider global community is looking at internet governance. And if I switch, forgive me for looking away from my camera, I'm just looking to the to my other screen. Again, there's then a lot more detail on the sort of proposed structure, and I'll share my other screen with you just to give you a sense. This is probably one of the better wiki pages in that regard. So let me stop sharing and then share if I can. This should work, my other screen. So yeah, so I believe that's worked. So just to give you a sense of the wiki page, they all follow broadly the same topic, but I noted that some of them still have got the template text, so they're not really at all up to date. But this one's pretty impressive in terms of having a summary, a more detailed session description, which is far more detailed than most that you see on EuroDIG, to be perfectly honest, and then tells us that there's going to be 2 separate panel discussions. So first one with a range of people, including Nigel Hicks and Chris Buckridge, who some of you suspect will have come across previously. And then the second session with even more panelists. So I suspect they may struggle for time, if I'm honest, with 35 minutes for each of these 2 parts. But the second panel includes, amongst others, Esteve Sanz from the European Commission. So some pretty decent speakers. I'm sure all the others are as well, but I don't know them all personally. I know those 3 for sure. Just looking at what should Europe be looking at from the Global Digital Compact, etc., etc. So I mean that gives you a sense for this particular topic. As I say, this is perhaps an outlier in terms of the sort of sheer detail that it's provided, but all of the sessions have something on the wiki. So if any of these catch your eye, look on the wiki pages for the greater detail. Oh, sorry, I went the wrong direction. Yeah, and then the sort of the one towards the bottom there, pre-7, sort of civil society oversight of law enforcement action in cyberspace. Again, seemed like an interesting topic. Just looking at that interaction between, I guess, sort of human rights, freedom, etc., versus the sort of needs of the law enforcement agencies and so on. So again, it should be an interesting discussion. And it's got a good 90 minutes, so it's sort of time to drill down into some of the detail, which I think would be quite fun. And then just moving on, as you can see, sort of 4 p.m. local time, the sort of keynotes for EuroDIG proper. So we've gone from the sort of pre-sessions to the main event, as it were, which kicks off with a number of keynotes from the provost of our hosts at Tampere University, then a yet to be named minister from the Finnish government, then Piers O'Donoghue, who some of you will know from DG Connect in the European Commission, who chairs the high-level group for internet governance that the Commission runs, and then Sandra, the Secretary General for EuroDIG, who anyone who's ever been involved in EuroDIG will know Sandra. Who and the very small EuroDIG Secretariat pull everything together each year. And then that runs straight in the next morning. So we're now on day 2, next Tuesday. First topic that I've pulled out is models to support investment in the network infrastructure in Europe, which is the way forward. And the reason I called that out is it's a really interesting topic, and I think I've got it on the next page. Having had that sort of discussion, sort of middle of the next screen, their keynotes Tuesday afternoon with Andrew Sullivan from the Internet Society, and then Lise Fuhr from Etno. Etno has been very much sort of putting in a proposed model to the European Commission of the sort of big tech companies contributing to the cost of the sort of network infrastructure in Europe. So to have that sort of workshop I just mentioned on looking at this model support investment in the network infrastructure, I think is really very interesting, and I'm sure that will sort of tease out a range of views from all sides of the debate, because obviously not everyone completely agrees on this topic, to say the least. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that plays out. And then sort of sandwiched in between the two, flash 3 there, you see at the top of the screen, building digital mutual trust between China and Europe. There's sort of 3 speakers from China who are leading on this session. And again, I think it would no doubt tease out some fairly mixed views on the topic. So it's going to be fascinating again to see where that goes. But I think it's unlikely there will be consensus in the room somehow on this subject matter, but we shall see. So quite a wide range of network infrastructure funding models in Europe and China on internet governance, and that's just on the sort of first half day or thereabouts. And running in parallel with those on the first day, the sort of main topic 1, which I've not pulled out any of the sessions from to share here, is around the sort of war in Ukraine, with various sort of Ukraine-specific topics, which personally I'm not sure I can contribute much to those discussions, which are why I was concentrated on these. But if that's of interest to you, then again, look on the wiki, you can see more detail on all of those. And then we move on to main topic 2, as it's titled on the EuroDIG agenda, which is internet fragmentation. Again, a pretty meaty topic, certainly from a policy and indeed technical perspective, considering internet fragmentation. which starts at 3 p.m. On day 2, and I'm sure in Andrew Sullivan's comments in his keynote immediately beforehand, he'll certainly have something to say on that topic, as well as on funding models for network infrastructure. So it should be quite a nice crossover, sort of, as we segue between those. Yeah, so it's really going to sort of spend the afternoon talking about fragmentation and then as it applies to resilience, and then fragmentation, and bringing in the Global Digital Compact for the sort of third part of that discussion. So that will run through the sort of rest of the afternoon, as you can see. So I think those are sort of that plus funding models for network infrastructure, 2 very interesting issues for EuroDIG to tackle. And then on the third, Wednesday next week, topic 3 is digital platforms. So they're really picking the big topics to run with. And as you can see, that on Wednesday morning, we'll sort of start by looking at the metaverse as the sort of next big sort of offshoot, if you like, or direction for the platforms. So look at risk and then at the bottom of the slide, you'll see resilience as well, as that applies to platforms. Look at some of the regulatory challenges, technical impacts, etc. And sandwiched in the middle of those is another subject which I'm certainly very keen on as a trustee of the Internet Watch Foundation, and that's the proposal for regulation laying down rules to prevent and combat child sexual abuse. So CSAM in the context of the internet. So there is another digital platform session in between, but I'll be sort of stepping out from that to join the workshop 5, as it's titled, which is sort of running in parallel, because there are 3 parallel streams that I've sort of cherry-picked content from, and I personally think that's a really important one, and it's looking at the dichotomy, or the apparent dichotomy between privacy and child protection online, with a range of speakers lined up, one of which I think is on the call, which is Mike Tunks from the IWF. I don't know if any of the other speakers, Vittorio is also involved in that workshop, but he's not on the call at the moment. Putting you on the spot, Mike, is there anything you want to say about that that workshop just for a second? If you do, feel free to unmute and do so, if that's...
I would just say that I've got a big just turn my speaker. I think we have 3 or 4 different speakers on that one. We have a couple on the child protection side. We've got some technical experts joining us on that, and hopefully someone from Finnish law enforcement as well. So it should be a good session. Thanks.
Andrew, I can't personally hear you anymore, I'm afraid.
That's probably because I pressed the hardware mute button on my microphone rather stupidly. So thank you.
Thanks.
So I was just saying, if anyone's not familiar with sort of EuroDIG, in most of the sessions, other than the keynotes, they typically will line up a number of what they call key participants to front load the discussion with typically 3 minutes or thereabouts of thoughts each, to really just kickstart the discussion. And then we'll open it up so that anyone else that's joined, whether in person in the room or online, is able to ask questions or add their own point of view on the topic. Which is why I find it a very interesting event, because it does give more airtime to a wider range of people, or it can do if the session organisers for each of the sessions follow the intended approach, for EuroDIG. So you get a much better idea of the sort of spectrum of views often, especially if you watch the chat as well as the sessions are running through. I think that was my last slide on EuroDIG. Let me just check. Yes, it was. So let me just pause there for a moment because it was a very quick sort of run through of a small number of the sort of various sort of keynotes, workshops, etc. that caught my eye, and see if anyone else that's going had anything else that you wanted to highlight, or any other points anyone wants to make. So if you do, just unmute and say so, or put it in the chat, or raise your virtual hand, whichever is easiest for you. And I'll just pause for a second to see if anyone does. Someone's raised, Peter, you've raised your hand. Jump in.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm sorry if you actually covered this already, but do you know if remote participation is possible?
It definitely is, and if I try and sort of multitask by facing away from the camera for a second, in a moment I will put in a chat a link to the registration. There's no cost to attend EuroDIG other than your time, so there's no registration fee either in person or indeed online.
Okay,
Yeah, so I just posted that in the chat. So yeah.
Thank you. I think you might have said that at the beginning. I apologize if I missed it. Thank
That's
you.
quite okay, but it prompted me to actually put the link in as well. So so that's a useful thing. Again, for anyone watching the recording, I'll put the link on my website as well. So you can just sort of click on that and register. I don't know if they close the registration at any point, or if that runs sort of throughout EuroDIG. Again, I'll just look at my other screen. Should register up until the 14th of June. So yeah, whether you can sort of register after that, I don't know. But the website suggests by the presumably close of play on the 14th, so middle of this week, to register. Attendance is free, although it does give you the opportunity to make a donation towards EuroDIG should you be so inclined, but there's no actual fee to attend as such. Anyone else with any other questions or comments before I move on? And Peter's helpfully put that, having read the page more closely than me, that registration for online participants will be possible throughout. So that 14th is presumably just for, oh yeah, it does say actually in-person attendees is by the 14th. Directly underneath that, it does say, now I'm looking at it properly, for remote attendance, you can do it at any point through the meeting. Thank you.
I think that's excusable. You're reading and
two pairs of eyes, though, is always a good
time.
thing, Peter. So thank you.
Yeah,
Would hate to put anyone off by giving the wrong impression. Okay, right. Well, yeah. If anyone else has any other questions that occur to you through the call, then just put them in the chat as we go on, or we can ask them under any other business at the end. But in the meantime, I will jump to some of the things from the weekly headlines, which are sent out slightly later than I normally do today. So you probably won't have had a chance to look at these. So I just, as I generally do on the call, just highlight a few of them. So this is a sort of a unscientific section of those which particularly appeal to me, starting with the one at the top. I mentioned this, I think, a few weeks ago, that Firefox 1.14, amongst other things, has got some updates that are security related, and also relate to how it handles support for DOE. And I just sort of noted an article this week which sort of gave sort of a helpful summary of some of those, not least of which there's a useful little table if you look at the article, which just gives you the various options in terms of how DOE is supported. So I think the default option is it will use secure DNS or encrypted DNS. In other words, if it's available in the region that you're in, but it will fail over to unencrypted DNS in the event of a problem, but you can change that. So you can force it to be stricter than that, force it to not fail over, for example, and there are various other options which are explained in the article. So quite a useful article if you're not completely au fait with that, but have an interest in seeing how Firefox 1.14 has implemented those features, some of which will no doubt be replicated in some of the other Chrome-based browsers over time. There was also a very short article just comparing the performance of two of the most popular open resolvers, Google DNS and Cloudflare DNS, to see which was the fastest. Although, to be honest, it was a very superficial comparison. They simply ran DNS perf on the two of them, and I think by a millisecond or so concluded that Cloudflare was faster for that very specific test. Since it was such a lightweight test, to be honest, I'm surprised they didn't incorporate more open resolvers such as Quad9 and others. It wouldn't have taken much effort to do so, but it literally just looks at Google and Cloudflare. And then other stuff, so I won't go through all of these. There's an update to Internet Draft on recommendations for DNSSEC resolver operators. It's not gone through working group last call even yet, so it's some way of being a standard, but that call, I thought that would be worth a read, since DNSSEC has come up on this call from time to time. A few others which are malware related, but also just the one sort of fourth bullet point down. NIST has starting a project, if I paraphrase, to, as it says on the side, to counter the adverse impact that encryption can have on enterprise cybersecurity. So it's a project that's just kicking off. I thought it was interesting, looking specifically at TLS 1.3. So I suspect that's a topic that will be of interest to others on this call. So well worth some of your time to take a look at that. I think they're still signing up interested parties to be involved in different ways in the project. So if it is of interest either to you as an individual or to your organisation, definitely worth clicking through on that. And then finally on this slide, I just sort of mentioned the bullet at the bottom. It was either last week or the week before. I referenced a post from Eric Rescorla, Eka, the long-standing CTO of Firefox in Mozilla Corporation, indicating that he was stepping down from that role, and he's just announced in the last couple of days what his new role is within the US CDC, specifically within a CTO within the Center for Forecasting and Outbreak Analytics, which is a sort of part of the CDC I'd not heard of before, but quite a departure for Eka from Firefox into part of the CDC. So whether he have the bandwidth and indeed inclination to continue his enthusiastic engagement in the ITF, I guess we'll find out in a month or so in San Francisco. But again, since I know quite a few people on this call know Eka, I thought just in case you'd missed that, that was worth highlighting. There's a whole bunch of stuff which I've also just posted the links to, which is I also thought of interest. I won't go through these here, but there's plenty there in different areas. So if you have the time to do so, well worth looking at that. The only one I will mention, as Kathleen is often on this call, is on Ripe Labs blog, a post by Kathleen Moriarty separating FUD from practical for post-quantum cryptography. So since PQC often comes up, certainly one of the topics of the hour on Census by Kathleen, that's definitely worth a mention, but there's other things you'll see on there as well. Okay, and then given that there are always workshops coming up, some of which have got calls for papers or proposals, you'll see that the Journal for Cyber Policy has got a deadline later on this week if you want to contribute a paper to a special issue that it's doing, connecting the dots between the DNS and today's cyber reality. And then the only other one I'll mention for now is OARC 41 confirmed last week that it will be held in Da Nang in Vietnam. So it will be co-located with ICANN's next DNS symposium, and also a one-day session on DNS abuse. So the Monday of the week where OARC 41 is held, which is the first week of September, will be a DNS abuse. The Tuesday will be the ICANN DNS symposium. And then the Wednesday and Thursday will be OARC 41. And the deadline for call for presentations has been extended to the 20th. So you've got just over a week still to put in proposals for presentations for OARC 41. I checked on the ICANN site. They haven't updated it yet to officially state that the DNS symposium is taking place on the day before OARC 41 starts, but I'm reliably informed it is co-located in the same venue the day before. And because OARC is in the same venue, unlike its normal events, there won't be a registration fee if you attend on site, whereas normally there is. So there'll be no on site fee to attend OARC 41, other than obviously the travel costs, hotel, etc. But it should be a good event, given it's got DNS abuse session and the DNS symposium as well. So that's quite an interesting 4-day program overall. So if you're interested in going to Vietnam for a few days, then maybe see you there, who knows. And then just finally, forthcoming events, as I mentioned last week, a lot of good stuff happening in June, although if you're only just remembering now that NANOG 88 is taking place in Seattle, it's probably a bit late to go on site, given it starts today. So probably in an hour, half an hour to an hour's time. Also starting today in Washington, so we would have started by now, ICANN 77. And as you heard earlier, starting next Monday, EuroDIG in Tampere in Finland. Then before we know it, we'll be at San Francisco for ITF 117 in 6 weeks time or so, 5-6 weeks time. So future call topics, haven't firmed up what we're going to talk about next week, but the week after, Vinny Parler from Cisco will be joining us to talk about Cisco's very recently announced Zero Trust Access product, and there's some related products in the umbrella portfolio, which Vinny will no doubt talk to, which were announced jointly last week at Cisco Live and WWDC, so making use of some newly announced technology. And as you can see, we roll through to following week, Peter will talk about the joy of text in a very 70s themed session. A week after, Andrei Meshkov from AdGuard is now confirmed. He'll be talking about experimental support for ECH within the AdGuard portfolio and so on. So you can see the others over the sort of few weeks running through to the beginning of August now. There's some other stuff I haven't scheduled yet, such as on Dates TBA, including one I've added, which is would include a discussion possibly next week, or it might be a bit too soon, on SNI versus DNS, some of the pros and cons in using the two in the context of some of the implications of ECH, but more of that probably in the next few days. Which brings us on to any other business. So that's, sorry, a bit of a run through. Apologies for talking so much on the call for rather than bring on guest speakers this week, but let me pause there for a bit and see what other things anyone wishes to raise, or if it's perhaps EuroDIG related, ask about, or whatever. So open agenda, see what else people want to bring up. So if you do so, pop it in the chat if that's easiest, or raise your virtual hand if you're somewhere where you can talk, or just unmute if no one else is talking, and that's easiest for you to do. So anything that anyone wants to bring up this week. I'll give you a chance to think and do so. I'm not seeing anyone typing, I don't think, at the moment. But anything on anyone's mind at the moment? No. That's good to see, Eric. Thanks for your comment in the chat. Good to see you found that useful. As I mentioned, I don't normally tend to speak for the totality of the call, so hopefully next call you join, you'll find about some more varied inputs from other people with more subject matter knowledge in specific areas, or feel free yourself to do so if there's a topic you want to cover off. Anything from anyone else? Since we have plenty of time. No, I don't think I'm seeing anything. Right, well, in which case, hopefully I may see one or two of you in Finland next week. It'd be fantastic to either see in person, or for that matter, online, if that's easier. So maybe catch you there, and also we'll have the call, as I said, next Monday as well. So one when the other will speak then. So have a fantastic week, and catch you next Monday, if not before. Bye all.